Roderick Blank, a businessman content with life, receives an email with a list of all the people he has slept with and will sleep with in the future. However, a vigilante on the loose hunts men who take advantage of women. As Roderick confidently strides around town, he calls his assistant Trixie while she browses his emails. All over the news, a woman called Death Knell, who wears different disguises and leaves spray-painted messages, lures men guilty of exploiting women and puts them into a coma. However, Roderick isn't afraid of her seductive advances since he's about to marry his fiancée, Fiona Wormwood. Another major part of his life is owning a fast food chain called Swallows. While Trixie reads her boss's emails, she stumbles upon a suspicious email. When she opens it, she finds a list of 101 women's names. Thinking it's for the wedding, Trixie asks him if he knows Patricia Francini, the first woman on the list, to which her boss says that Patricia took his virginity. They then realize the list is all the women he slept with in consecutive order. The man assumes the email is a pre-bachelor party prank from his friends. He mentions he slept with 29 women, but Trixie interrupts, saying there's more. Fiona is the 29th woman, but the list reaches 101. Then, Roderick arrives at the office and still thinks the email is a prank, so Trixie asks if he knows Carlotta Valdez, the woman after Fiona. Her boss doesn't know Carlotta, so he tells her to print the list. Moments later, Roderick reads the list until his friends barge in and bring him to his house for his bachelor party. He asks his friend Lester about the strange email, but his friend doesn't know what he's talking about. Later, with an escort invited by the groomsmen, Roderick uncomfortably leaves for the kitchen. He shows Zach the list, but he thinks Roderick drunkenly sent the list to himself. Afterward, the men push Roderick into his room with the escort. Everyone thinks they're getting it on, but the man refuses to make love with her. Soon, Roderick realizes she's Carlotta Valdez, shocking the woman. Not long after, the two make love, proving the list accurate. Contemplating his relationship with Fiona, he heads to a vulgar newsstand. The seller reads an explicit magazine of Cynthia Rose, the 31st on the list. When Roderick leaves, Death Knell arrives at the newsstand. She shows him his underwear and reveals she knows he snoops on women. The woman invites him to her room and the man accepts. The following day, Roderick admits to his fiancée that he's not ready for marriage but doesn't want to cancel the wedding. Heartbroken, Fiona frustratingly tells him their plans had already been made. To comfort her, Roderick embraces her and sees newspaper tabloids of Death Knell's new victim, and Cynthia's autograph signing later that day. Later, he goes to the autograph signing venue and sees a long line of men. In the distance, a gray-suited man, Beta, snaps photos of the unfaithful man heading to his car. Suddenly, Cynthia exits the back door and hurriedly asks for a ride, so Roderick drives. The two get to know each other and the man mentions he's getting married in less than 2 weeks. This excites Cynthia more, asking him for a favor in exchange for sleeping with her. She requests the businessman to act as her boyfriend to present to her strict father. Soon, the two have dinner with Cynthia's father, Victor. Since the young man is spending the night over, Victor doesn't want the two to share the same room. That evening, Roderick and Cynthia are about to have an intimate moment in her room until Victor interrupts. When the father opens the door, the young man sneaks out. The next morning, Cynthia's grandmother passed away. Cynthia asked why Roderick never returned to her room to finish their sneaky rendezvous. The man realizes he went inside the wrong room last night when Victor mentions his mother had a strange smile of pleasure before her demise. He learns that Cynthia's grandmother is also named Cynthia, the person he slept with. Upon finding out, Roderick freaks out and immediately heads home. Days later, Roderick ponders whether he should tell his fiancée about the list. Arriving home, he sees Fiona, who's been contemplating their relationship, thinking it's time to leave. She gives her fiancé one last chance to take her back before she leaves. However, Roderick doesn't come back for her. Suddenly, Fred and Beta pop out of nowhere, surprising the man before putting him to sleep. Moments later, Roderick wakes up in a plain white room with Alpha and the other gray-suited men, also known as agents. Alpha mentions the existence of a powerful device that knows everything, called the Machine. Last week, the Machine sent 2,900 emails of the date of the recipient's death, except for Roderick. Alpha then warns the man not to reveal anything about the Machine because it can cause panic and chaos. Before the businessman leaves, Alpha instructs him to get rid of the list. That night, Roderick goes to a bar and meets Greta Samsa, the 32nd on the list. Soon, the two have a pleasurable time together. The businessman spends his days at places where he expects to meet the women on his list and successfully sleeps with them, crossing out more names. At Swallows, the cashier, Alexis DeLarge, reveals she knows Roderick because she's studying about the restaurant for her business class. Knowing she's the 37th on his list, they spend an intimate moment together. Over the months, Roderick reached from 29 to 62 women on his list. Then he goes to Zach's house for his friend's son's birthday party. At the party, Roderick is surrounded by families, a world he's longed for. Afterward, the businessman and Lester go to a bar, and Bob, a stranger, joins them. Bob reveals he got an email months ago of an unexplained date. He thinks he'll meet his soulmate, unaware it's his death date. Shortly after, Death Knell catches Bob's eyes, so the ecstatic man follows her. Suddenly, the lesbian couple, Bambi and and Thumper, known for their show about women empowerment, enters the room and draws everyone's attention. Trixie gushes over her idols, and Roderick finds the two women on his list before receiving a hotel card from them. Meanwhile, at the hotel, Death Knell spray paints her vengeful message, unbeknownst to Bob. When Roderick arrives at Bambi and Thumper's hotel room, the two women suggestively advance on the businessman, and the three have a pleasurable time. Concurrently, red paint drips on the gullible Bob, seeing the spray-painted message above him, and realizes the woman is Death Knell. In the room next door, the lesbian couple argues about their intimacy, so Thumper says to turn the cameras off. Unexpectedly, a cameraman appears, startling the businessman. Thumper reveals that this was part of their show all along. In the other room, just as Death Knell is about to put Bob in a comatose with a powdered sleep-inducing substance, the fearful man tries persuading her not to kill him. This angers the woman as she slowly approaches. While he backs away, Bob meets his demise when he suddenly falls off the balcony. The next day, Roderick goes to work and apologizes to Trixie on the phone for making love with her two idols. Trixie arrives and advises him to bury the list because he's meddling with the forces of nature. That evening, the businessman and his assistant dig a hole to bury the list, but the man begs his assistant to know the next name before he buries it. Trixie gives in and only reveals the first few letters, Dr. Murr. As the two bicker, Beta and Fred watch them through a secret camera. Finally, the businessman buries the list, making Alpha proud. The following day, Roderick and his friends watch a football game on TV. Lester purposely tries to make his turtle ill so he can bring it to the beautiful veterinarian, Dr. Miranda, and try to make a move on her. Upon hearing the doctor's name, Roderick realizes the veterinarian must be the next woman on his list, so he intends to go with Lester to the cafe Dr. Miranda goes to. Later, Roderick goes to the cafe and sees Dr. Miranda across from him. After witnessing the businessman struggle to open his bottle, the doctor helps him. She questions why he was staring at her and the two have a conversation. Attracted to the man's charms, Miranda admits that she just got out of a relationship just like him. So the two vow not to fall in love with each other and they get to know more about each other. Surprisingly, they get along well, sharing the same interests and humor. Roderick contemplates his friendship with Miranda, realizing it could be love. At the businessman's home, Roderick kisses Miranda, who avoids his advances. She admits she doesn't want to rush sleeping together. Over the weeks, Roderick's friends constantly bug him about whether he slept with the doctor yet. One night, Miranda and the businessman have a date at a bar until the doctor points to a man she slept with 2 weeks ago. Bewildered, Roderick knows she's sleeping with others except him. Despite their close bond, the doctor flirts with other men except the businessman. Unsure whether Miranda is the name on the list, the impatient man digs up the list and discovers the name is actually Dr. Mirabella Stone. With all his efforts trying to sleep with Miranda, he cries in frustration. Infuriated, Roderick goes to Agent's headquarters. The troubled man wants Miranda because she's special to him, but Alpha scolds him, and Beta steps in, saying there's nothing they can do about the machine. Then Alpha mentions that Death Knell just put an entire fraternity into a coma, the same acquitted frat house for producing spiking substances. Meanwhile, Roderick checks his messages through the telephone and plays a voicemail from Miranda, saying her book is being published and that she loves him. Despite the good news, Alpha assures him that the two won't be sleeping together. That night, Roderick prepares for his date with Miranda at his home, where he prepared dinner. When the doctor arrives, she tells him they're going to the bar because she invited her friends, disappointing the man. The businessman tries to make her stay for their intimate date, but Miranda pushes him away and jokes that he just wants to sleep with her. Roderick tells her off, causing her to drop her glass and shatter on the floor. Eventually, she confesses that she just wants to be friends with him. She even dedicated her book to him as her beloved friend. Disheartened, she leaves and slips on the glass shards, hitting her head on a plant pot, thus killing her. Later at the hospital, the businessman views Miranda and removes the sheets, finally seeing her unclothed. He unbuckles his belt, wanting to prove the list wrong until he glances at her anklet and takes it. Upon leaving, a doctor confirms him and he sees her name is Dr. Mirabella Stone, the name on the list. The following morning, Roderick wakes up from a one-night stand with Mirabella. The businessman spends his days at the bar, waiting for his sexual encounters and doing the deed. Disheveled and tired, he decides to book a trip to Europe since the remaining women's last names are foreign, but he immediately dumps the plan. Afterward, he calls the 80th woman on the list, and they agree to meet. At the bar, Hope Hartlight, a self-help book author, warmly greets Roderick. Although he wasn't attracted to her, it made him easily move on after sleeping with her. On the other hand, Hope is a good listener, and they get to know each other more. Soon, Roderick's friends meet Hope, and the couple eventually make it to their 1-month anniversary. Unfortunately, after a couple of weeks, the two separated. At work, Zach and Lester talk about Roderick's affairs until the news broadcast interrupts them. Death Knell left her driver's license at the site of her latest attack, creating more leads for investigators. Meanwhile, Death Knell buys a magazine at the newsstand. The seller realizes she's the vigilante on the news, so he fearfully runs away. At the office, the group listens to the broadcast revealing Death Knell's real name, Jillian DeRay. So, Roderick checks his list and finds Jillian on the 101 spot, realizing he'll die soon. Immediately, he rushes to Alpha's headquarters and waits for the machine to give another miracle. Alpha calms him down, saying the woman could be another Jillian DeRay, just like what happened with Cynthia. Suddenly, cards spew out of the machine, and Beta investigates the coordinates written, suspecting that the machine will tell where Jillian will stay a few weeks from now. With a mission to prevent Roderick's demise, Beta orders him to hold off sleeping with the remaining 20 women in the next 2 weeks. In addition, Alpha advises the businessman to start a new hobby. To cheer up Roderick, he gives him one question in the universe that he can ask. Roderick wonders how many planets with life are in the entire universe, to which Alpha replies 11. Before the troubled man leaves, Alpha reminds him that he has 20 human shields between him and Jillian and to not sleep with them for better chances of survival. In the next few days, Roderick tries different hobbies to distract himself. He decides to go on a bike ride, but unluckily, he gets into an accident. During the accident, when Roderick was left injured on the track, a bus from a religious all-women college found him. Instead of helping him, the women took it as a sign to help themselves and end their virginity with the injured Roderick. This unfortunate event shortens his list down to 2 women left. On the brighter side, Roderick decides to marry the 100th woman on the list, Ethel Walters. Zack questions who the bus driver was, and Roderick realizes Ethel was the bus driver who also had a pleasurable moment with him. The next day, Trixie knocks on a paranoid Roderick's door, who barricaded himself inside his home now that Jillian is the last on his list. Trixie booked him a flight to Australia because she found him another Jillian DeRay. She throws him an article about Jillian, a marine biologist. The businessman thinks the biologist is unattractive, leaving him unmotivated to go to Australia. He then thanks his assistant, falls asleep, and awakens from a call from Fred. Fred confirms that Death Knell will be at the Mayfair Hotel while Beta spies inside the vigilante's room. Furthermore, Fred theorizes a loophole, which is Roderick's exes. The list doesn't repeat the same name, even though Roderick slept with the same woman more than once. With this, Fred and Beta suggest sleeping with his exes, but Alpha intervenes, assuring that they'll capture Death Knell, and reminds him not to leave his house before ending the call. Afterward, the bothered man notices a light reflecting on his face. He traces it toward the junk, seeing all the items from his previous affairs. In an attempt to change his destiny, Roderick goes to the hotel and mistakes a woman for Death Knell. Her friends, who idolize the vigilante, chase the man down the street, so he heads into a diner. There, he meets Death Knell and reveals the agents plan to get her. The vigilante knows Roderick and his many affairs, who's aware that she's Death Knell. The two sit together and she hands him a pill that will put him in a coma. He sets it aside and the two get to know each other. Jillian studied poetry and chemistry, and Roderick commenced the writing she spray paints on her victims' walls. Before Jillian could graduate, her husband constantly forced her to wear costumes for their central moments, but it eventually felt suffocating. Suddenly, they hear police sirens, so Jillian sits beside the businessman. She admits that her husband would hit her, but at the time, she didn't complain nor question why because he was her husband. When Jillian wrote her poem on Valentine's Day, she infuriatingly threw her pencil to the ground, hopeless of escaping her husband. Her husband enters the room and slips on the pencil, causing him to fall to his demise. Shocked, Jillian fell unconscious, and when the EMTs arrived, they thought she was in a coma, giving her the idea of punishing men who degrade and take advantage of women. In the present, the vigilante reveals her husband was Victor Rose IV, and Roderick mentions he had a one-night stand with her husband's grandma. Afterward, he also reveals that he received a list of everyone he slept with and would sleep with. Later, he shares about his encounters with the women on the list. The vigilante wishes she had made a change for women to stand up to men's heinous impulses. Shortly after, Jillian gets another pill and says she'll ingest it with him. Then, the two leave and head to Jillian's house. Together, with the end spray painted on the wall, they feed each other the pill and passionately kiss before heading to bed. Years later, Roderick and Jillian are happily married with a son. Roderick learned that sometimes what seem to be answers are questions in disguise. At the agency, Alpha receives a card from the machine, stating that it's fate that Jillian and Roderick would be together. Finally, Death Knell's victims wake up from their coma.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.